All right. So, uh, at the last class, we were seeing from the jobs, how do you work on different kind of jobs, right? So, today we'll just talk more about security, let's authorization, and let's talk about some best practices on how to use Jenkins because that's the final part that you need to understand. Okay, so first thing is, if you look, all the jobs that you're creating will be displayed here like this. Okay, so this place where you see something or all the jobs is basically what we call it as a view, VIEW. So view is nothing but an option in Jenkins through which you will be able to see what and all jobs that you want to look. By default,
Having you guys in the future, I can tell you will have a different experience.
okay, so by default, we will always be looking at this view called all, which represents all the job. So many times in production, it is not easy for us to see all the jobs because say there are many groups who are working into it. Okay, and now you want to just quickly go through your jobs and segregate them. So in that case, what we can do is we can create views of our own and segregate the jobs in such a way that it will help us to see the job, whatever that we have configured. So as I say, view is nothing but based on all the jobs that is available in the Jenkins, it will just show you a page through which you can see only the jobs of your interest rather than seeing everything. So this way you can group jobs and create a view, and based on which view that you're working, you can always go there and it will show only the jobs based on that which you have configured and not everything. So it will be easy for navigation and it will be easy for monitoring also, because now if you have 200 jobs in this page itself and everything is running, it will be messy and you really don't know what is what and how it is happening. So if the same thing is you create views and put all the jobs based on each of the specification, then whichever is whichever your interest, you can go to that specific view and whatever jobs configured in it, you can work only on that. So in that case, to create a view, you just click on this plus and it'll ask you to give a name. So basically, if you just give, let me say that production. Okay. So now it's going to open up a configuration, and here we need to give what are the jobs that we are interested to see. Okay. In that first, we have to say what are the types of job that you want to see. Whether do you want to see only the jobs which are enabled, that means it is running, or is there any jobs which we have disabled for some purpose and you want to see only them, then you can see. Or if you say all, regardless of what is the status of the job, it will be showing the corresponding a list of all the jobs that you're listing. So how do you choose what job that you want to see? By default, if you see, it will be listing you all the jobs, whatever is available in the Jenkins. So it will give you, right now we have only three, that's why it's showing. Suppose if you have more than that, it will show all that. So either you can choose any jobs that you want to see in that view, pick that. So this way you can pick any one that you want. Suppose say this is a production. So I just want to see the CI and its corresponding downstream. Only this two I want to see. So you can choose this way, or you can use a regular expression just like how a regex works on Unix. So what you can do is you can use the regex or regular expression to match a string comparing to what you have given. Suppose I want to check and see all those jobs which starts with down, and if I say star, so then what will happen, all the name of the jobs which starts with down and which might end with anything, it'll come, right? Or I can even say star in the before. So that means if there is a word called down in the job and what and all job that has a name like this, it'll display. So you can use different kind of characters based on the reg expression, how you want to see. So this kind of matching will also be possible, because what will happen is, for one product, you will be having multiple jobs to do different tasks. And if your interest is to see all the jobs for one product alone, then you can create a view only for that. And in that case, what you can do is you can give all this grouping saying that, okay, match the name of this product like this or some pattern like this. And if it matches, display all. If not, you can pretty much simply choose whatever jobs that you want to see. And when you're seeing what and all are the details that you want to see is the column which specifies next. So is it the status, and weather indicates what is happening. It's not the weather or the climate. It is the nature of what is happening with the job. Is it always successful? Is it something failing, or it is unstable? So those way it will be trying to give the details. And name of the job, when was the last time it was successful, when was the last time it failed, and for the last run whatever it happened, that is the status that it shows. So how much of time it takes. And correspondingly, you will have a build button option wherein you can try to build this job from that particular view itself, rather than going inside the job and then click on the build now on the left hand side. In one page you will can I mean you can see all the jobs of your interest, and having a build button there itself, by which you can just click so that it'll work. So if I just say, so you see, by default, it is all, but you also have a tab, which is nothing but the view called prod. And inside it, you're seeing only these two. And it shows all the details, whatever that you have specified. And now if you want to do a build, you don't have to go inside and then click build now. Simply click on this button, which is nothing but the build now. And that will run this job immediately. Okay, now like this, we can create many views based on our need. Suppose I have some test related files, or I have some test related jobs, then I can use only this to show. So you can see only those kind of jobs. So if I want production, I'll go here and I'll see only the jobs listed. But that doesn't mean that all the remaining jobs are deleted. You are just seeing or viewing only the selected jobs. And correspondingly, if you look, the path will also change. So now if some user is coming and he wants to check for all the jobs specific to the product or working, you can directly always give him this path, so that rather than giving localhost 8080, if you give this path, he will always land here and he need not worry about anything else. If not, it will be confusing that by default it will go to all. From this, he need to go to prod and then move. Instead of that, you can give this is the itself as the path, so that they can choose and see all those. So in your production, you will see many tabs like this, which are nothing but the views, wherein each view will contain specific jobs which are of our interest to see for that view. Getting it?
Yes, sir.
So we can't disable this all option, right? It will be there.
Which option? No, by default it will be
All,
there.
yeah, it
If
will
it
be
is
there.
not there, then how will
Okay.
you see the job? You cannot see the job at all. By default, it has to be a view only through which you will be seeing. So if it is not
Okay.
there,
This prod and if the prod and test, okay, these two views we created. Okay, based on the user or groups, we can provide the access.
yeah, we can create a view would be common. So as I said, you can give the access to particular people. We'll come to the job specifically. By default,
Mhm.
we will be giving read only to everyone. Okay,
Okay.
so that's what we will see. Now, talking about the same, until now, we didn't do any login, and we are just going to
Yeah,
this
yeah, yeah.
8080 port and we are working. So what we need to know is there are two things, access and authorization. So what do you mean by access and authorization? So first thing is we need to decide on who should be allowed to work on this Jenkins? Okay, so can we set a username and password is the question that comes, because to do authentication you need to give some access to the user. So in that case, how do you track which is the user is working and whether he should be able to work on this or not? That is one. And the next one is the access authorization or permission. So that means what is that person should be able to do, whether he's an administrator who needs to manage everything, or he's just a developer who's not interested in modifying or configuring but just only to run or only to see. Like that, we can give specifics access permission based on our requirement. So these two things are separate. So how exactly it will happen? So if you go to manage Jenkins, and in that, go to the second option called configure global security. Now what this means? So this means now you are trying to give some security to the Jenkins installation so that no one can just access it easily. Okay. So to give that, first you need to enable the security. Okay. And then how is that we can enable the security? That is the user authorization. Now for doing that, there are many ways that you can do. So one of the default ways, Jenkins has its own database. So whenever you install Jenkins, there is a small database that it gets updated with the user and its details. So if you want to create a user and set it up specifically to allow him to work on this, you can use this Jenkins own database, so that once you set this and apply, the next time when you try to come to this page, it will go to a login and it will ask you to enter username and password. And since it is the first time, there will be one bottom tab called sign up, wherein you have to give the username and password, and then based on that you will be allowed inside. Now if you look in a larger organization, it is not advisable to keep on adding users and keeping it locally, because so think about this. So you will have 100 machines in your company. So are they giving you separate username and passwords? No, right? It is one common username that they give you and a password. Based on that, you will be able to connect to all the machines in the network. So in the same way, now we can use that method, whatever that you're going to use, into Jenkins. So that is what we will use LDAP or single sign-on. So what does this LDAP do? Now, so if a user has a account that has been created, okay, now what will happen is they will not be creating the account directly on each of the machine or application. So instead of that, what they'll do is over the NIS, they will set up a LDAP server, and in the LDAP server, they will try to put the username and password and connect all the servers to this LDAP. So now what will happen is no matter from whatever machine that you're trying to connect, if you try to log in, first it will try to validate whatever details you have given against the LDAP server, and then if the details of that person is available in the LDAP server, it will allow the user to go ahead with the server or application. So in the same way, what we will have to do is if we want to use that company's LDAP, then simply use LDAP, and you need to give certain details, that is what is the root DNS, which is the user using which you want to connect, where is the base from where it can take all the details, so specific password to access, all those things has to be filled up. Now if you know, you can fill it up. If not, you need to work with IT in getting up all these details on what is the LDAP server and what are the configurations that you need so that you can connect to that. Okay, so this way in companies, you will not be using many username and password. So it will be like a common shared username that can be used across all the applications or machines that is available in the company. So that is what internally they'll be doing it. Okay, so so if you see in the production, more than 90-95% everyone will be using either LDAP, or there is one more called as Active Directory. So any one of them they will use based on which one they are already using. So this way, one account can be used to log into all the machines and including application. Okay, but to set it up, what we need is we need these details based on which we can give the input and try to connect. So now what will happen is, suppose from your machine, if you're trying to connect to this, Jenkins will not directly connect here. So what it will do instead, when you try to connect, first it will be redirect to LDAP, and in the LDAP server, your username and password will be validated. And if it is fine, it will go ahead and do whatever access that you want to give. So that is how, rather than giving each user separate account, we will use the LDAP configured to the Jenkins so that his common user ID can be used to log into this. Okay, so that is what you should know. And next, so you are given access, that is fine. But what should be the person, or what is the permissions on which the person should be working on? So when you talk about permissions, there are different permissions, like if a person can modify a job configuration, or so it's like he should be able to create a node, delete a node, or configure a node, or manipulate a job, delete a job, like that. You can think of what is the permission that he wants to give, and based on what kind of project he's working and the role, we can give him that permission. So basically, the DevOps team will have all the administration privilege, whereas if it is from the developers, then they don't need the complete configuration of the job, because if they mess it up, it will be a problem. So a developer would need only a read permission to whatever jobs we have, and along with it, he should be able to run some build if he wants. So that is what we can give the permission. The same way for test engineers, he doesn't have to do any code compilation or anything. So what does he need? He just wants to see the job and the status of it. So like that, you can try to set the user permissions, and Jenkins will take that permissions into considerable when it is logging as that person. Okay, and by default, if you allow a user to log into Jenkins, then he can do anything what he wants by default. Okay, so that is what we have to break. Now, either you can do that way. If not, what you can do is you can use this metric based security. So here it will list what and all are the options that is available and what he has to do. So suppose if you want to add a new user like Adam, so what I'll do is I'll add a user. Okay, so it'll add. Now you can choose what and all options that you should give. So overall is, can you administer the Jenkins itself? Can you do some update? Or if you want to run some script or upload some plugin, this is what you'll be doing. So click on each of the option that is needed. In the same way, he should be able to delete a job and modify. And when you're talking about agent, that is nothing but the node or slave. So should he be having permission to modify a node or delete a node or edit a node? So what is that he can do? And then for the actual job, what can he do? Can he start the job? Can he stop the job? Can he enable, or can he configure or delete, like that? If someone wants a permission, you will be choosing it. Okay, so now if a person is going to be administrator, then you simply click on this. So based on that, if whenever the user with this user ID called Adam logs into this machine, he will have all the access. Okay, so based on this, you can choose what user to add and what are the permissions that he wants to have. So suppose if there is one more user who wants to run only the build, but he doesn't want to do anything. Okay, so correspondingly, you can choose an option where that the job will be only triggered by that user and he cannot do anything else. And many things, whichever the permission is not given to him, will not be available on the Jenkins job homepage. Getting it?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So Adam, like once we log in one normal user, okay,
Mhm.
that user only can do some particular jobs. So rest of the jobs they can't do running and trigger everything. Or
Yeah,
maybe
they
we
can
can
see.
disable.
They can
They
see.
can see, but they can't run.
Exactly.
Okay, okay, okay. But how we can give the job ways? We
Yeah,
can give
there
the
is
job ways.
there is a metric based plugin that is available. So just like how you saw here, right?
Yes, yes.
So
Yeah.
there is a plugin called metrics based plugin. So if you install,
Mm-hmm.
what will happen is
Okay.
when the job, if you open up, say for example, you open a job, if you open it in here, you will see an option of using the metrics. So in this, you can give what are the details or the same thing, whatever that you have given, right? In that, you can add a user and you can give options what he can do so that this will be specific to the job. So what we will do many times if you have requirement like that, we will not be adding all those things there. So in the security, we will be adding only the administrators so that he will have all the access. But other than that, what we will do, so usually the jobs will not be known to anyone because since we will be using view, they will not be able to explore anything. So go to a particular job or a view. In that, choose a job, and in that specific job, we will add a user and we will give the details specifically so that this matrix based will work specifically for this job alone. Getting it?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. Let me check that.
Yeah. So how do you disable a job? Sometimes you might want to stop the job for some time. So it's quite simple. So you can see this option called disable. So if you just click this, the job will get disabled and it will not run. So now once you enabled it, then the job will start running. So that's how in sometimes you might not be running it or the release might have happened. You have to wait for some time. So unnecessarily, if it is running, you will stop the Jenkins and keep it from not running because that's quite important to make sure not to run all those things. Okay, so that is what is important that we need to understand. So like this in a specific, you can disable or enable. So all those things are options. And as I said, when a user comes without login, okay, so or even if he logged in, many times he will not be able to see all these options. That is because the options is not being authorized to that person or permissions are not given. So that is why they'll not be able to see all those things. Suppose if you have given the configuration of a person to just run the job, then he will not be seeing this option called configure or delete. He will just say build with parameters.
Can we hide a job?
Hide a job. Um,
Yeah, I mean,
No, I haven't tried hiding it but doesn't make sense. So that's what we are doing. We don't hide, but basically we will not give the authorization so that he can see. So there's no point he can do anything other than just seeing it. So that's good enough. Wherein whatever that you want to achieve, you can achieve. It will be only a read-only permission for him.
Okay.
Because if you
Thank
hide, and if sometimes if we won't be knowing, because day in and day out you'll be creating so many jobs, so at some point of time you'll forget it if you hide it completely. So that's why we usually don't hide but disable, or as I said, so you don't give a permission to anyone else, so even if they see the job, they can just see something is running, so they don't be knowing what exactly it's running, what is happening, whether he should be able to do, no, nothing like that, so he can just see it as a read only. Okay, so now coming to this, like whatever that I said is just a fundamental. Now, how critical that you want to change it, or what and all additionally that you can do it, it's all based on the plugins. So there's tons and tons of plugins that are available, and which you can just use. Now, what are the plugins that you might be requiring from the build perspective or from the release perspective? So for each of the activity, there will be one tool. Okay, so that completely depend on what task you're going to do. But let's talk about some of the plugins that would be useful for you in and day out. Okay, now in that case, I'll just listed up a couple of them, and it's not like you might be using everything, but it's good to know, because even when you go for an interview, the questions might be coming from this itself. So that means if they ask something, can you do it? So yeah, you can do it. And then how you can do it? So there's a plugin using which you can do. So that what is the difference? So no one will ask you, oh, tell me how you will have the plugin configured, because there's some steps you cannot always remember options and all. But if you remember the plugin name, that should be good enough. So the first thing is parameterized plugin. Okay. Okay. So I'm not getting the exact name, but let me at least walk you through this. So there's a plugin called parameterized trigger plugin. Okay. So, okay, wait a minute. Let me check if it's installed already. I can show you that. Mhm. Let me open a job. Configure. Okay, it's not there. Okay, now this is a plugin called parameterized trigger plugin. So what is the purpose of this plugin? Okay, now whenever you're running jobs, right? So what we do is we call one project from another project. So that's what I was talking about downstream or upstream, right? Now, in this case, if you have triggers wherein you have to call multiple other jobs, and in that time, you want to actually pass a parameter from the parent to the child, then it is not possible, because what we are doing is we are just calling it. That's it. But what if specifically you want a parameter to be passed from the parent to the child? So that is when this parameter trigger plugin will help you. So specifically when you're configuring in the post build action, So if you have to call another job, so you will be doing build other projects, right? So along with this, you will get an option for the parameters. So when you install that plugin, you will get two options wherein it will ask you which is the build that or the project that you want to call, and in case if you want to pass a parameters, what are the parameters. So that is when you can set whatever value that you want to set or based on your requirement, so that now when this job is calling that another job, it will pass those specific values through which you can call. Because when you're doing some kind of pipeline, one step or the other step, you need to pass the values from the first to the second. Okay, so like an example, you might do a labeling step. Okay, so the label should happen at the end after the build. So what you can do is you can create a job for which if you give a string, that will create a label. Okay, so now in that case, if you call it as a downstream job from this, how will you pass the specific value? Yeah, you can pass a value. By default, you will be giving some standard default string that will take, but you will be generating the build number or you'll be creating a tag or whatever it is during the build on the runtime based on a change or a commit, and you want the tag or label to be created based on that. So in that case, you should be able to generate that first in this job and then pass it to there. So that is one. Just like how you use environment variables, the parameter also works as a environment variable. So you can pass it over here, and then from that particular downstream job, you can access the same variable. So basically, that's when it will be very much useful to share the values between one job to other job, because there are many times you might have to pass some values, because even when you're running script, you're calling one other script, you will be passing some values or you will be passing some parameters. So that is what same thing you can do using Jenkins. Now, the values that you will be passed is the default value, but other than that, in Jenkins, each time that it generates some value, it will be creating a default set of environment variables related to Jenkins itself, and everything will be stored. For example, it will be storing the build number, whatever you are running specifically in a variable. So if you do a dollar or a percentage of that variable name, you will get the build number specifically. Or when you're trying to do a git uh, pull or whatever, there is a commit number that it is creating, right? So at any point of time, if you want to get that, there is a specific special variable that Jenkins uses to store. Like that, there are many variables that Jenkins create by default in the environment and store. So what you can do is you can either update that, or you can create your own variable and pass to that, like how we saw in parameterized build. So you create your own variable, right? So like that, you can create it and pass it on. So basically, this is one of the useful plugin wherein you can trigger another build based on some options that you will pass during the runtime rather than taking it as a default. Okay. And the next one, pre-SEM build step. Okay. So what is this pre-SEM step? So as the name suggests, what if you want to do something before connecting to a SEM? Okay, so now as part of a continuous integration or as part of any build step, the first thing that we do is we connect to a SEM and we try to get some information out of it, right? Suppose you want to set some trigger or you want to do some task before actually calling that SEM. Because as soon as you set the SEM task is the first thing which gets executed in the job, right? So in that case, if you want to have some task before you do to that SEM step, then you can install this pre-SEM. So what this will do is here, as okay, anyway, it's just showing here. So now here you will get the option called run build before SEM, and this will be exactly like how you are having the build step. So it'll have the options of invoking a shell or Windows batch or Maven, just like how you are having, because this option that what you have here, the build step specifically, which we saw. Now, this, when it will get executed, this is the one which it actually gets executed after the SEM, right? So the same thing, if you want some option before you run the SEM, that is when this will help you. And this will come as part of our build environment. Here, you will get an option. And if you click, you will get the same option like this build, but this will get executed before doing anything. Okay, so you can write a script for some kind of triggers to validate some user authentication or to validate certain scenarios before you trigger anything. So that way you can make sure that if any specific workflow has to be implemented, you can actually use this. Okay, so it's basically nothing but you will get one more build step, but that will be useful and used before you run something in the SEM part. That is what it is going to do exactly. Okay, so
Yeah, okay.
next thing, job configuration history. Now this is something from the maintenance part that will be useful. So if you look now, in the team, there might be many people who have administration privilege, and many people will try to change the configuration, save it, and all those things they'll be doing, right? Now, how do you know who did the change? In case if you want to know, it's not possible. And at the same thing, how do you know whether we have a backup of what it is done? So that is when the job config history plugin will be useful. So by default, what will happen is this plugin, when you install, you will get an option in this page here. So right now it is not there, but when you install, you will get a job history. Okay, if you click, it'll be giving you the details of what and all are the changes that has been done, basically who did it, and you can see the difference of what was it there first and what it was done currently, so that you can know which user modified it, and also you can keep a track of all the changes, so that if something is wrong and if you want to go back to the previous configuration, you can simply choose that particular version that it choose, exactly not a version, but it will be maintaining it something similar to version, saying that at this time this user modified it. So it will be useful for us to come back at any point of time and choose, because sometimes we might be testing and later we might forgot what we tested because it might be too many changes that we did. So in that case, simply go back to that previous version and Jenkins will use that. So that is what job history is, one of the useful. Okay, yeah, there you have. Good. So the specification, whatever I said, if you see, you will get an option here and you click, this is what it will show. So now it will show you that who was the user who modified and what was the date and time that it was modified, and it will basically see the difference of what it is. So now if you want to see who modified, okay, and what was modified, you can just click which versions that you want to modify, and that will basically show you what exactly is happening. Okay, but one thing which we need to know is it will not show you from the UI, but whatever changes that you're showing will be shown in a XML format, because what you should understand now is whatever that you're doing is on the front end, but everything gets stored in the backend, right? Because of some files in the backend, you are trying to get this output. So that is what it will be trying to show you basically, not like very straightforward like this, because it's the UI which you are changing and cannot show the difference between UI. But correspondingly, the files, whatever Jenkins stores, it will be showing you that. So you can see with that some values has been modified, what is the column or the element that has been modified. But if any point of time, if you want to restore, you can simply restore it using any option. So that is how it will be quite useful to know and try to maintain a backup. Okay, so this is again one of the important plugin that we will be using to maintain. Okay, next, build failure. Okay, is there anything? That's good. So build failure plugin. Now, what is a build failure plugin? So many times what will happen, you will be running some steps. So when I say build again, don't get confused that you are actually doing a build. Build is nothing but what is that you are doing here in this step. In this step, whatever you're doing, that is called as build. So you can either do an actual compilation or a build, or pretty much anything else that you're doing is also considered as that. So now, uh, taking to the actual scenario. So when you use it, you will be pretty much using it for doing a build. So when I say a build, it will not be just one step. There will be like tons of step wherein they can write some plugin, or they will use one script, or they will write everything together in that place itself. So that will be like some 50, 100 lines, some shell lines, whatever that you have to call, they will be running. And based on that, if you go to the console output, everything will be coming out, right? Now, if the output itself is pages together, it will not be easy for us to look at something and get the information, because you have to keep on scrolling and all minute things will not be easy for us to capture. So in that case, what you can use is you can use this plugin called Build Failure Analyzer. So whenever a build fails, you can configure this plugin in such a way that you can give certain regex, okay, that is some pattern of strings that you want to match. And if that pattern appears on your log, that is the console output based on some command that you're or steps that you're running, it will try to capture the number of occurrences and it will indicate that there is a failure that has happened, so that it is useful for us to see what is the actual issue that has happened and what is the trend on when it has failed. So for example, okay, now let's take a build. So a build is continuously failing at some network issue. Say some sync is not happening or mount is not happening. So now out of some 5,000 lines in the output, you will literally not be able to capture it when it is happening. So now you can give a string or a pattern here, something like NFS mount failed, okay, or sync failed, something like that. So if you give, and you will tell which is the file on which that you want to check the output. Okay, so I'll talk more about it in some time. So when you specify the output of the build, what it will do is whenever you run the job, and if it fails, and in the output if you get any string matching what you're giving, then it will indicate in your job. That is, once you run the console output, right, once you run the console output, you will get some details here. So in this place you can see some option like this. So on a specific build, okay, you'll be seeing some option. So until now you'll be seeing only this, but if you add this plugin, additionally you will be seeing this name whatever you are given. For example, these guys have given it as Java compilation error, check style error. So now in my case, if the example that I said is NFS error, so now you could have given the heading as NFS error, and it will say that how many times that error happened. So it'll be easy for us to keep a track of all the builds that has failed, and you can even create a trend or a graph based on, hey, okay, so on a monthly basis, these many build fails for this issue, these many build fails for this infrastructure issue, so that it'll be easy for us to track and try to create some automation to suppress that problem. So basically the idea is not to recreate the problem, I mean not to let it happen for a long time. So you can capture these kind of issues and try to note. So that is when build failure analyzer would be very, very helpful. So it will tell you. So if you open up the log, it will exactly say based on the string that you have given, it will show you where exactly that it is matching. Now this is not be easy if you're doing it manually. So if you see the example, he has given that there are some /d means in the pattern matching or regex match any numbers. Okay, and plus means one or more occurrence of the same. That means whatever space with the number you have, it could be a different number of occurrence, and it should end with check style errors. This is the syntax or the string. So if you go here, he's saying that it is 7. So if you see something like this, then highlight and give the message here so that you can know where exactly it is happening. So this is again something useful when you're trying to have a metrics and a clean way of managing the build, not just saying it is failed, giving some more helpful information on what exactly it is failing. So when you're forming a stable build system, these kind of things will be useful when it clearly indicates, because if you open a job, if it fails, now it will clearly indicate on the bottom what is the problem and how many times it has happened. So that's the smartness or smart level of how we manage the build output. Getting it? Don't be scared or like what the hell it is. I'm just giving you certain examples which I've used so far. So pretty much it's again, I'm just saying it's more of a knowledge wherein you might use it or you might not use it, but it's better to know all those things because that's how you will be really interested to work more on Jenkins, and you can do many more things like this. So it's not just restricted only to this. So you have lots and lots of options. Okay, but these are more from the maintenance perspective is what I'm talking, so that on a regular release management or build management it will be helpful. The next thing, nested view plugin. So what is this nested view plugin? Now when I was talking about the views, we were able to create one views only, correct? Now let's make it little more tedious, where if you see there is only one view and inside this you are seeing. But now take this in the production, if you had two products and each of the product had 10 jobs. Now what will happen? Again, it's all 20 jobs is going to come here. But say one user is working on 10 jobs of one product and the other user is working on another 10 jobs. So both of them will not be interested to see all of the jobs together. So what you can do is using this nested plugin, if you install, now you will get one more option in the view wherein inside a view you can create one more view so that it will be appearing like a folder. So once you click a view, now here you will get the option of creating a new view. So if you click this, it will be creating one more view inside this view so that if someone clicks onto this prod, all right, it will be just an empty view with some folders so that you can now click on which view that you want to go and he can go to that view and see only that jobs. Wherein if he wants, he can directly have one more path and he can go to that. So it'll be like view product, view that specific group of whatever he wants to do so that he doesn't have to go through all those things. He can directly go. Or if he comes to the product, he can choose which particular sub or the nested or the secondary view that he wants to, and he can go inside it. So that is what nested view. In fact, in your production, you will be seeing this also again, because there will be many jobs, and one product itself will have the test and production. So in that case, you cannot have two views, but both those views should be there for one product, right? Because now if I have another five product like this, how many views will you be creating like this separately? So instead, you will create one view for one product, and inside that, you will group or segregate based on whatever jobs that you want to look. Okay, so it's more useful for viewing a view inside a view. Okay, getting it?
Yes, I am.
Okay, so metric. So this is what Gokul, you were asking, right? How can I give a specific authorization for a job? So you can make use of this plugin. So what this plugin will do is, once you install in the job, whenever you configure, you will be getting an option right in the beginning at the first tab, wherever you give the node and all, you will be giving you will getting an option. So that option you can choose just like how we saw in adding. So there will be one button if you just add with the username, so it'll ask you what and all the permissions that you can give to that user for this job. So based on that, you can give the options. So this is the plugin that you will use for that metrics authorization strategy. Okay, and build timeout plugin. Okay, this is something again useful for our day-to-day task. So what does this plugin do? So many times you are running some job, but without knowing, it'll be running for a longer time. So in case if you want to stop right now in Jenkins, what will you do? You have to come here, and when the job is running, you can see the job which is running like this, for example. It'll be running. So there'll be a cross mark here. If you click, you have to stop. But like this, there will be many jobs that will be running. You cannot literally monitor. So what you can do is you can give a timeout in the same way how you can give a timeout on Unix. And using this plugin, what you can do is you can specify a time. So when you install it in the configuration, again, you will get a specific option wherein it will ask you what is the time that you want to set. So regardless of what it is doing, what you can do is you can set the time. So now if Jenkins job, whatever that you specified with this, if it reaches that specific second that you have given, then the Jenkins will abort the task. It will not do anything. So in few cases, you can set this just to make sure that you're not running the task unnecessarily, because you know that a job will take 1 hour to run. Okay, something critical, but you can give a timeout of 1.5 hours or whatever based on some requirement. But if you say a timeout of 2 hours, if it takes more than 2 hours, definitely it will stop at that point of time and will not, because there is no point for us in going further and failing later, or you don't know what is happening, it might get hung. So like that, you can choose on the failover time, and specifically at that point of time, Jenkins will stop that particular job. So it is the same way as in Unix. To run any process, you will use a timeout. If you're running a script, okay, or any binary or executable, so you don't know how long the process will run. So in that case, to make sure that it runs on the proper time along with some elapsed time that you can give, you can add it. And if you say a timeout, specifically until that time, it will wait. But if it goes beyond that, it will automatically kill the process. The same thing is what we can apply to the Jenkins job using this build timeout. Okay, so basically, so if you say the build timeout is 2 hours in seconds, so exactly at 2 hours, if the job is still running, it'll stop it. So that's what it starts the timer, and if it reaches 2 hours, it'll stop the build. Build in the sense, basically whatever the task the job is doing, it will stop. Okay, now one more important Jenkins concurrent plugin. Okay, now this is something interesting. So now when we saw some requirements, what will happen is we should be able to handle multiple jobs running on a particular node. That is one we saw. But how can you make sure multiple run of the job itself directly? So that is what we call it as concurrent builds. So in that case, you can make use of this and you can handle. Am I not audible? Okay, so if there is a requirement wherein you want to do parallel tasks, so can you run a job parallelly? That was the question. So by default, it will not allow you to do, because when you run a job, if it is already running, it'll wait for the next run to start only if the first run is completed. So that is when some scenarios might require you to run the job parallelly. Say something like build, you will do it one after the other, correct? Sequential way. But let's take a job. You are creating it for some kind of request. So request in the sense, um, okay, let's take a simple uh, concept, like you have multiple products, and for each of the product you want to create a label. Okay, something simple. Now this is regardless of where, because you would have written the job in such a way that if you pass a name and if you pass a particular product repository, in that repository it will go and create the label. So this is a simple automation job that you can create. Now when all the multiple products are running, all the build will be happening. Now each one of them, if they are finishing, they will try to access this job. Now, just because one job is using this, you cannot say that I'm waiting, because this is independent of the job or the task. So any number of times that you want, you can run this. But by default, the limitation is that the job can be run only once. So in that case, you can make use of this throttle concurrent job that will help you to run the job parallelly. Okay, so you can choose how many times that you want to run, and based on the node also how you can run. Because again, if you set one job to one node, okay, and if you say the job can run two concurrent builds, that means I can run the same job parallelly two times. Okay, one and one, that I can do. But if the node on which this job is going to run itself has only one node, or the group has only one node, and in the node there is only one threshold what you have set, or the executor is only one, then what will happen? There is of no use, right? So you have to match it in such a way that the node should be able to run the job as many times. So the first thing is, if you want, you can set the throttle by saying the job itself, how many times parallelly it can run. Okay. And on the other side, where is it going to run? Everything is going to run on a node or on a group of nodes. So ideally, you should also see on the other side, by setting this, can you actually run it on the node or on the group of nodes that is available? So both the things has to be checked. Okay. So there might be a question in that way also, that can we run a job parallelly? Yes, by using this plugin, but it depends on the other way, on how many nodes we have in the group and how many executors we are giving in that. Getting it?
Uh,
Yeah, Dhruva.
Uh, so can you consider the sonar tool as well? So sonar plugin to generate the reports as well, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, like I said, every tool, Sonar Cube, Chura, Jukako, everything has a plugin here. So all you have to do is choose what
Okay.
is the plugin needed. So if you basically go for Sonar plugin, okay, so now that's the reason I said I'm not going through specific plugins
Okay,
for
okay.
tools. No, no, I'm just saying it because these are the
Yeah.
plugins which is more for maintenance, and this is more
Okay,
for
okay, okay.
tool. So now here, when you run SonarQube, so what will happen is, as part SonarQube is nothing but static code analysis tool. So in your build, you will have to run something like Kobertura and generate the report, and that report you will be publishing it to SonarQube. So when you install SonarQube plugin, it'll ask for a XML file. So that XML file has to be generated by the build. Okay, and you should be knowing where the path of the XML file is generated. And in the plugin, it'll ask only one option, that is, where is that XML file on which the static analysis of the code has been done and kept. So that when you pass it to the input as Jenkins, then you will be having Jenkins installed somewhere, right? So that will try to take all this information from that XML. So that's the only thing that you will do here. So then if you go to the actual Sonar Cube page, there you can see what is this results that has been obtained from this XML file that has been passed by the build. So that's how you will be configuring. So it is not like directly you will be seeing Sonar Cube on Jenkins. Sonar Cube is a separate tool like Jenkins. There's some port on which it will be running. There is some UI. You can see the code coverage. But how do you pass information to that? So that is what you will do using SonarQube plugin. So if you install SonarQube plugin, it will ask you the details of where is the SonarQube plugin, where it is running, that information. And to pass or publish, that's what we call. So at the build, you give the XML path of where the code is being analyzed
Okay.
and the report, and that will be published into the SonarCube site, so that now if you go to the SonarCube site, you can see. But still, Jenkins will give you some small options boxes like this, wherein you can get some few results. But if you want to get the complete results, if you go to the SonarCube where you have installed, since Jenkins would have published the report using that XML, you can see all those things in the SonarCube directly.
Okay. Adam. Yeah, okay. Thanks, Adam.
Okay, now this is something which is more important, and this is what we call it as a Jenkins developer. Okay, now what is this build pipeline? So many times now, whatever options that we are using, like a freestyle, in those days we used to have a Maven type or specific configuration. So all those things, you have some specification on what to do, and for that, how you will be doing it. But what if you have lot of things that you want to configure? Because what happened was when people started working, only for those who are trying to create some process from the scratch, you can use Jenkins and they will be happy with it. But think about a scenario, you had your own script, okay, and you yourself had your own continuous integration or automation with so many pre-requirements, checks, everything you would have already done. So to replicate the same thing, it will not be easy in Jenkins to do. So that is when build pipeline gives you an option wherein we can write a groovy script inside Jenkins, and we can create the workflow of Jenkins, and we can decide what to do, when to do. For example, if you want to have an interaction between the Jenkins and the user at a particular point of time, not like in the beginning. Okay, now how can you do it? So this is not possible straightforward, but you can use this build pipeline plugin where instead of running the build step like how we saw, it will try to show you a Groovy script path wherein you can write the Groovy script and get whatever details you want. So in the latest version of Jenkins, this build pipeline plugin comes as default. If not, in the older versions, it has to be installed separately, but with 1.6 and above, pretty much in 2 also, Jenkins 2, you will have this by build pipeline as default. So pretty much if you go now, let's create a new job. Okay, so test. So now you can see it shows it's as a pipeline, right? Now if you click, there is no difference. You will have same option. So you have the build, you have the build triggers, okay? But look at it very closely. You do not have the SEM. Okay. Now, what does it has? So it has an option called pipeline. So this is what it means where you can define your workflow. So it doesn't mean that continuous integration always has to be in the same way. So you can define whatever you want. You can choose when to connect to the SEM, when to have a user interaction, when to do what, rather than having the standard of Jenkins, you can choose based on your requirement. So for this, now here it will give you a prompt wherein you have to write a Groovy script. Okay, so this again works on the DSL. DSL means domain specific language. So Groovy script is a specific domain case wherein we need to understand the syntax of that, and based on that specifically it will be working on that. So in case now if you want to handle anything, you need to write everything. There's some sample which already it gives. Say now if you want to print something like hello world. So this is one sample way in the Groovy how you can write it. So now if you simply execute, okay, it'll execute. But it's not just showing like how we were doing earlier, because now everything was run using some kind of plugin which had a defined structure, but here you are running it more of a raw format. Okay, because here you can make use of Groovy. If you want, you can write your JavaScript by which you can create the workflow based on your need. And the advantage here is you can create as many as steps. So there is something called stage. So what you can do is now when you're writing this, okay, so there is a syntax again, something called a stage. So what you can do is now this is everything is one step. So now you want to do a build, you want to run a unit test, you want to connect to your Sonar Cube or whatever that you want to do, everything is one step, right? But what if this product itself has various stages of working, wherein say you have one common component which you want to build, and then you want to do this actual product. So in that case, now first when you have the common component, you have to go through the same workflow of compiling it, unit testing it, and then doing some test, and then creating the package. And after, if it is successful, you will move on to do the actual build and test and packaging of the real component. If something like that, this will not help. I mean, the regular workflow will not help, because everything has to be repeated and you have a lot of dependencies, right? So in this case, what you can do is you can create it as a stage. Okay, so stage is nothing but a group of tasks that you want to do. So rather than executing everything one after the other, you can create as a stage, and you can put all the commands into stage one, and you can give more conditions like writing a program. So you can say that first you run stage one, and in the stage one you do whatever task that you do, and you can give condition in such a way that if stage one completes with whatever parameters or whatever criteria, then you go with stage two. Like that, you can have as many stages you want. You can skip anything in between, just like how you write scripts. So you can give the condition and say that, okay, if this doesn't work, then I don't want to do all the stages. I can go to the final stage, and in my final stage, I can pretty much do something directly, or I can skip some steps in between or stages. So stage is nothing but a step which is over the executors. So that means whatever that you're giving here by default until now, whatever that we were giving, right? It is all one stage. That means you do everything at one shot and that's it. But in the same way, you can have multiple jobs that you can think in that way, multiple jobs within a job. So that is how you can use it using pipeline. But pretty much if you start doing all those things, then you will be called as a Jenkins developer. So that is when these kind of things will be more asked from a side wherein you will be working as a developer, okay, with more knowledge on JavaScripts, because Groovy requires little knowledge on JavaScripts. Getting it? In fact, to be frank enough, even I haven't worked, but you'll use little bit of Groovy script. That's quite useful, not only for this, for many of the automation. Jenkins works very well with Groovy script, and you can do some really powerful automation using that. But its scope is like that. Yeah, if you want, you can do everything, but pretty much if you don't want to add workflow, we can stick to our regular template and we can use the plugins whatever is available. Getting it?
Yes, Alan.
Gokul?
So this pipeline in the same job, we can execute multiple commands for multiple node. It is correct?
Yes.
Fine. Okay.
I'll do one thing. I'll share a
Absolutely.
document. That's a big thing. So this is like I said, right? It's like a development itself. So you're changing
Correct.
the behavior of Jenkins. So for that, it's going to be completely different. So I'll send you that. So unless you're really interested in doing those development, I'm not keen on doing it. So I'll share it in case if you want to get.
Okay.
Okay. Now, little bit of internals of Jenkins. So the first thing, as I said, Jenkins is based on Java, and actually, if you see it on the mm, services in Windows, or pretty much if you're running it on Unix, if you do a ps-ef, and you can see there's a lot of Java process running. Okay, so everything is Java only. Now, if you go to the installation, so how do you know where exactly Jenkins is installed? So if you go to the configuration, okay, the first option will tell you where Jenkins is installed. So this is what we call it as Jenkins home. So if you go to this Jenkins home, okay, now in this, there is one folder called plugins. So this will have all the plugins, whatever we are installing. So whatever that you install, basically it gets downloaded here. Okay. And now, other than that, you have notes. Okay. So notes folder will have the details about all the nodes you have configured, and you can see one folder for each node. And if you go inside it, there will be a config.xml which has the details about what is your node, because in the front end you are using the UI to modify, but in the back end what is actually happening is it updates everything in the XML file. So whatever options that you have given there, it has stored everything simply in this format. So that is how it is trying to understand what exactly you have given. Wherein if you see, this is the tag which represents the remote root directory, and what is the label which is important, how you want to trigger it, and what is the name and number of executors. Like this, corresponding to the value that you have given, each configuration will be stored in a XML file, and all the details about the nodes will be under the nodes folder, inside it specific folder for the name of the node. And coming important to the thing is jobs. So this is where you can see all the jobs and its related details. So if you go inside it, okay, so you can see the folder with respect to each name, and it is maintaining it separately, so that's how it can track what is happening. And now if you go inside it, okay, so in this you can see a lot of folder. So the first folder called builds, so that is the folder that will have the detailed output or storing each of the output that you are having. So So your detail maintaining this build history, right? That is what it will be maintained here. And now if you look, it is nothing but the name of the build that it is storing. And as the other files you can see, these are nothing but references to when was the last time the build successful, when was it stable. So those information will be stored. And if you go to the local folder of the build number, it is just like going inside. Suppose if I go to the build 8, you're seeing something. How does it give? It gives because there is a log file which is stored for each of the console output. So that means when it is running a build, it will create a folder inside the builds with the specific build number, and inside that folder there will be one log which will be created, and this is the one which will have all the details. So let me show you this. So you can see this is the same output as what you're seeing here. Okay, so in fact, when I was talking about build failure analyzer, I said you need to give a log, right? So this is the log that you will be giving the details. So pretty much this log you have to choose and give the path on what exactly that you want to give. And in addition with it, it'll also have a XML file. This is the file which will have the complete details about what and all happened for that job, what you passed, what environment variable that it took, what is the output, so that it can track in case if you want to do some automation and try to grab some values, you can use this. And changelog is the file which will have the details of what is the commit ID in case if you are using. Right now we don't have anything, but in case if you are doing some task and you wanted to separately keep a track, because if you remember I said Jenkins has a environment variable for each thing that it is doing, and in fact it stores what is the commit that you're trying to store. So from where does it take? So all this information will be taken from here. So that's how each builds will be happening. So remember, the other way of seeing everything manually is you can come to this and try to see it manually that you can see. So jobs is the important. And other than that, if you go to the logs folder, this has the complete information about what is the connection that is happening between the Jenkins and the node and what is the output for that. So that also it'll give, and it'll also have the detailed output of the Jenkins itself. What is exactly happening, what it is connecting, what exactly it is doing at what point of time. So that details will have. So importantly, the jobs node plugin is what is quite useful. And if you go to the workspace, this is again is nothing but look at this. So what exactly is this? So it takes a copy of each of the workspace that is actually working. That means when you do some task on the same machine, okay, so what do you mean by that? If you don't give a node, where will it run by default? It will run by default on the master. And where is
Yeah,
master installed? This place. So that also needs a remote root directory, right? So it will take by default the Jenkins where you have installed. Inside that, it will create one workspace folder, and inside that, it will create a folder with the name of the job that you're running, and it will track everything, whatever you have done there. Getting it?
yes, Sharon.
Adam, one question.
Sorry.
I know like where is the path in the one question is like how to change the Jenkins home directory home path under the config.xml or Jenkins.xml, or is there any
Yeah, in
different
the
method
XML,
like we need to
Jenkins.xml.
uninstall move the directory
Jenkins.xml. There's no way
Jenkins,
directly you
right?
can do it. So you have to do the configuration in Jenkins.xml.
Mm-hmm.
It's not Jenkins.xml. The config.xml under
Here
Jenkins.
Jenkins,
Here, I'm showing you this. The config.xml.
but here again the question is the workspace directory the dollar Jenkins home, right? What is the where is the value? That is what my question. I know the value, what is the value, but where they defined, it's
It's a
default taking
default.
where they install,
It'll be taken
where
from
it
where you have installed it. That is what it
installed.
default takes.
Okay,
So it's
okay,
a default. If you want, you can change it to
okay,
something
okay.
specific.
Simply I can move the Jenkins directory to a different, or I need to uninstall again and install with the new path.
Which one? I didn't get it.
Jenkins, if you want to change the home directory,
Yeah,
home
you can change it.
Jenkins home,
You can change.
I can move this particular directory, Jenkins directory to different path.
If
That is
you
enough.
if you copy this complete folder to some other folder in the same way, if you run, it'll always
Okay,
consider the current directory as Jenkins home directory, and from
Jenkins
that,
home
whatever
directory.
path that you want to take, it'll take.
Okay, then, okay, fine, fine.
Okay, and finally, talking about the best practice. This is something new. So now, as we start using Jenkins day in and day out, there'll be many jobs that has been created. So first thing what you need to make sure is the number of jobs that you're having should be limited. Okay, limited in the sense every view that you create, it's an ideal practice not to have more than 20 or 25 jobs in each view. Okay, that is because if you look internally, whatever Jenkins is trying to load is based on what you keep inside this folder, right? Now, if you have more content, what will happen is it will take a lot of time to load the information because it is not just loading this. If you go inside, it is having so many information. So that is why you need to make sure the number of jobs is optimal and we frequently delete this output because as you keep everything, Jenkins is storing everything here. So the size of the home directory where you have installed Jenkins will also grow, and it is not just storing, but it is displaying. So the more and more contents you are trying to keep, it will take a longer time for the Jenkins to show. I mean to restart or to refresh. So in that case, what will happen? The performance will get affected. In the same way, it's not just the number of bills that you need to periodically purge, but if you go, the output of whatever you're getting will also be important because as I was saying one example, if you have 5,000 lines of output, do you think it will show it everything in one place? No, it will be trying to show with the scroll page. And if some user is coming to see this, it will take at least some 10 seconds to load this page. And like this, if you have 100 bills in your uh, particular job for only in this job, then assume how much of time that it will take. And like this, you will have 100 jobs. So pretty much think about the performance of machine, what will happen. So that is when you need to make sure that not to keep everything in one Jenkins, because if you start using too much of jobs, then you can split and create multiple Jenkins master and segregate your jobs based on your need. So you need to think on the load balancing to make sure. So first thing is keep the console output as minimum as possible. Try to make sure the number of bills that you're maintaining is periodically deleted, and then the total number of jobs that you're having should be less, wherein each view that you're going to use should have at least 20 to 25 and not more than that, so that the performance of Jenkins will be optimal. Getting it? And yes, I was talking about the node. So make sure every job that you run must run on any of the group or node, not on master. Because if you don't give anything, all the job will start running on master. And as it runs on the master, what will happen? It will put load on the same machine where Jenkins is running, because already Jenkins will be running so many processes, so many Java threads for everything. Jenkins is actually one Java process. Okay, so if you open up the processes in Unix, you can see. So if you do a ps-ef, you can see one Java process which is running and using heavy memory. Now, for each task that it does, that parent Java process is going to create multiple threads and run. So on top of it, if you run many more jobs, everything will be running inside it, and that process which you run directly on the Jenkins master will create some more process in the same machine, and it's going to put down the performance of the machine. So many times user will say it is getting slowly. That is the reason. So you need to think about optimizing all those things.